I remember the first interview, because I always talk about all the time that I was a very anxious individual and couldn't really hold a conversation. But Trina Lafargue was one of the first interviews that I did as like the lead of starting it, having the conversation, and then working your way into it. But even on that conversation, like neither one of us really did follow-up conversations when it came to we got a great question asked, we got a great answer, but then after that, all right, we're like on to the next one, on to the
Yep.
next one. Like it was very interesting. And remember the times that we would literally we would before having a guest on, we would review every show or movie they were on, and we would try to hit every show or movie that we watched to for them to talk about it. But I
Yes.
mean, that's just not feasible, man. Like,
No.
you got to let the conversation just be a conversation. But we used to try to, all right, they were on Gilmore Girls. All right, they were on Lucifer. All right, they were on Power. Like, we were just trying to boom, 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 boom.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
man,
Yeah.
it was hilarious.
It was pretty. It was. Yeah. I don't know why we always thought we could cram so much in, and
Too
it was
much,
just
too
it was
much.
just, and it's funny because when we finally realized to just let it flow, go back and forth, make it conversational, we end up getting longer interviews and more in than we did when we were trying to cram all the facts in. It was crazy, and then of course one that we have to bring up, the infamous, the amazing, the everybody was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Mr. Ed Asner, the late great Ed
Mm.
Asner. Wow, were we caught off guard on that one. Ed was he was gracious enough to be a guest on the show, and he called in, but Ed was having a little fun that day, and he was let's just say ornery. We'll go with the word ornery to describe Mr. Asner that day, and he was letting us have it a little bit, and he came on and he started right away like that with the and everybody in the room went silent, like what? Fuck that. I'm not touching that. And so I was in pure panic mode because nobody would pick up the microphone. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. So we got through it. I kind of guided and led. And because I'm older than everybody else, and especially back then, it was a really young group. So I had known some of the older stuff that Ed had done, and I was bringing up Mary Tyler Moore. I was bringing up Elvis. I was bringing anything to keep him on track, on subject of talking, so that we could get some stuff in because it was just so all over the place. And I remember when we went to edit that interview, we talked to him. We talked to Ed for nearly 2 hours. And that wasn't because the interview was that long. It was just because he was so scattered. We had to keep reining him back in. So we've got like 2 hours of footage where we're talking to Ed. And this thing ended up like what, 27 minutes? 20, like, I can't even remember how long
If
the
that.
interview
I
was.
don't I don't think it was two
No,
hours. I
no.
think it was around an hour. But yeah, it came down to like 20
It
twenty
was,
five
yeah,
minutes.
it was a lot of stuff, and we had to just consistently cut, and make it. But boy, if you listen to it, it sounds like it was a spot on. Like this is the conversation we had. He was just rolling. He was in a festive mood, and everything was good. Put it this way: when he came on, he was like, basically, what the hell am I even doing this for? By the time it ended, he was inviting us to come out to New York to see his show. So it was quite the transition from the beginning of the interview to the end of the interview. But thankfully, though, why it stands out for me is because it turns out it really was one of the last interviews that he did before he passed away. He stopped doing a lot of press and he wasn't doing a lot of interviews, and so we were very fortunate to have one of the last ones, and so that's just a great memory that we'll always keep with us. That we were able to have some fun and talk to him, and yeah, but boy, was that an experience.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. And I mean, so was, William Daniels and Bonnie Bartlett,
Mm.
aka Mr. Feeney and Mrs. Feeney. That was quite an experience itself. I mean, of course, there was the legend factor, and a lot of the younger people knew William Daniels more than Ed Asner, just because, I mean, of course, Elf and stuff like that. But
For
I feel
sure.
like William Daniels implemented or like affected our lives more than that. But yeah, yeah, that was interesting too. A great conversation. But Bill's a little old, so
Yeah.
we had to like, we either had to speak loudly or Bonnie would have to relay the message to him.
Yeah.
So that was always an interesting dynamic to try to balance all that out, but it always ends up being an amazing thing. And that's the beauty of these conversations and these shows being pre-recorded, and it's all editable. And I mean, that's the same that it is now. It really helps you in the long run to where you're like, okay, that sounded stupid. Let's cut that shit out.
Right.
But I mean, it's one of those things where, you're able to talk to legends and you're able to talk to people who are monumental in pop culture history, and to be able to just be in their presence or have a conversation with them is just an honor. So especially in those early days, it's crazy that we were able to experience those type of things. And I mean, we really have to thank, some of our first guests,
Yeah.
like Rebecca Kennedy, who has now turned into our forever guest, right? I mean, she's been on the
14
show like
times.
14 times.
Yeah.
Yeah,
14
exactly.
times.
So, I mean, to keep blessing us with her presence and the relationship and bond that we've been able to build with her off the podcast, has been something special. So, I mean, there's all of these different reasons that we continue to do this podcast that are so far away from why we started the podcast,
Oh, yeah.
right? So, I mean, it's definitely something special.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up William and Bonnie because if I'm not mistaken, they're really the first cross generational guests that we had, where all of the young people knew them from this, and then I knew him from Knight Rider and Saint Elsewhere, and of course Boy Meets World also because I was still around during Boy Meets World and it was an iconic show and everything. But I was more excited that I was talking to Kit than Mr. Feeney. It was just one of those really cool things where we could cross the generations with a guest. I remember another fun one was the because again we were caught off guard. The very first time that we talked to the extraordinary Danny Strong. He's coming on. We were super excited. Gilmore Girls, of course, is Doyle and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and we're like, he's late calling in, but no problem. We're good. No, that's fine. That's good. We're good. And then he we're like what a few minutes in and he said, guys, I gotta go, I'll call you back. And he just like
Yeah.
okay, and he like just cut up and hung up, and we're just like, wait a minute, is he gonna call back? Like, when is he gonna like? And he did, of course. He's a man of his word, and he did call us back and finish the interview. And it's a stellar interview. It's a fantastic interview. But we were certainly, to say the least, caught off guard. We're like, wait, did he just hang up? Did he just leave? Like, what are we doing right now?
Yeah, it was something like he was getting dropped off at his house,
Yep,
and then
yep,
like he had to walk through construction, because I went back and listened to that interview, and like he's like, I apologize if you guys can hear construction below me,
exactly.
because there was something going on. But yeah, we were like, okay, please call back because this is monumental for us, so please do.
Yeah, and we
Uh,
did. We were kind of like we didn't know what to do. Do we like just do we get up and start resuming stuff? Do we just keep do and wait for the phone call? Do we sit and wait for the phone call because he could be? We didn't know. We didn't know the time frame of when he was going to call back. So we're just like, okay, I guess we're gonna roll with this. Like, so yeah, always fun. And then of course Danny has come on several more times after that, and he's just been an absolute. Most recently when he was talking about Dope Sick and all of the massive success with Dope Sick. So he's been an amazing guest for us and a really good friend, and he's an amazing guy. So really pumped that we were able to get him and continue to have him as a guest on the show because he's just awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things, because like I said, went back and listened to the first interview that we had with him. So one of the things that I still take away from that interview every time I listen to it is, you don't always have to write what you know.
Yes.
Starting out as a writer, of course, you can write what you know, and I mean, hopefully it turns out to be good. But you don't always have to do that, because there's that one particular thing that helps you out, Research. That's what happens when you are able to have the internet and find all of these different things around that particular topic.
Yep.
So that is vital information, and that's actually his advice that he gave to up and coming writers. Don't write what you know. Research what you want to write.
And
So I always love that.
and another thing that I took away from that one that he also dropped was, don't be scared to put it down and go write something else and come back to it, because sometimes
Yeah.
it's just not there. It's just not where you need it to be, and you can sit and waste a whole lot of time trying to get it there, or you can go write something else and go write this and and then come back and go boom, now I've got this kind of a thing. I thought that was valuable too, because a lot of times I feel like people get writer's block and then they get stuck, and then they're just like, I gotta finish this, I gotta finish this, I gotta finish this, and they just ignore everything else. And it's like, you can't do that. You gotta so he's had a little success as a writer, so his advice is probably pretty solid.
Just a tiny bit.
Just a tiny bit. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I remember another monumental moment for us was, everybody knows we're super big into pop culture. We're super big Marvel fans, superhero fans. But to have someone who was actually in a Marvel film was so freaking crazy. Like, and plus, if I'm not mistaken, this may have been the first person who we interviewed that was a child star.
Was our first child star, yep.
Akira Akbar, who is now on Bel Air, for those who don't know. She was our first ever Marvel movie star that we had on the show. That was so freaking crazy, because I mean, the way that we were still new to the game but able to approach it with such class and carefulness, I felt like we did a very good job. And that particular interview shows like how much we cared about the craft and how much research we did to it. And I mean, this is also a very amazing thing because we actually got to talk to it was set up through one of Disney and Marvel's PR people.
Yep.
So that got us in the door at Disney and Marvel, to where people at Disney and Marvel started knowing the name ITCAFpodcast. And I mean, that was monumental.
Oh, without doubt. And that led to a little block over like that month and a half span where we had like a whole Marvel block. We were talking to Jeffrey Cantor and Amy Rutberg and all the people from Daredevil at that point, because it was like slamming and stuff. So we were like, yeah, we've got all these Marvel people coming on the show. It was pretty good. Amy was really fun too. I remember that she at the end of the interview, she was so cool. She's like, oh, you're gonna be in New Orleans? Well, I'm gonna be in New Orleans shooting NCIS. Yeah, NCIS. And she's like, just come find me at this such and such location. I'll buy you a drink for your birthday. We were like, she said that to one of our people, Tavia.
Oh.
And we're like, wait, what? Did she just literally say, hey, come talk to me, I'll buy you a drink for your birthday? Just those type people, that they're just real people. They're just like you and me. They're just like, and they're the nicest, kindest people. And I think that's one thing that we've kind of had the blessing to learn and develop these friendships over the years with all of these people, is that they really are just good people. And this just happens to be what they do. And that's an amazing thing, to be able to just realize they're no different. They're no, they get up every day the same way everybody else does, and they're just trying to live their best lives and do what they can. And we've, over the years, gotten really deep. I mean, we've gotten into some really deep conversations that we didn't expect to get into, but I think that it works out really, really well. I think one of the ones I remember initially is Denham Richards, of course, Yellowstone. Mm-hmm. We were talking about Kevin Costner, and then he just went real deep into slavery and history and just all kinds of stuff. And we were like, wow, okay, we're going to go there. And then we kind of like not long after that followed it up with J. Alex Brinson, who was the first guest to basically flip it on us. He's like, well, let me ask you guys, tell me about this, tell me about that. And I don't know. I think we really kind of like, we were caught off guard at first, but I enjoyed that. I liked the opportunity for somebody to say, well, tell me about you and let's hear what you guys are all about and let's get into these subjects and what drives you. What are you morally this, or what do you think about this? And that turned into a really amazing conversation where all of a sudden it wasn't us interviewing him. It was just, I think that was the real kind of like big turning point where like, okay, we can get really conversational with this. And I think that the fans like that when we just get really conversational and go back and forth as if we're just a bunch of friends sitting around the table. And I think that's the first interview that really kind of directed that, because he was the first one to turn it back on us and say, talk about you guys, right?
Yeah, completely agree. And I mean, it was at the very beginning of the interview too.
It
So
was.
I felt like, we were like, whoa, that's just not how this is supposed to go. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely one of those things where, you got to be prepared for everything in this
Oh,
industry, man, and for just in conversations in general, because they can go any which way. But they always turn out beautiful. And I love that we are able to experience these different types of things with these different types of people. It's always nice. And I mean, one of my favorites of all time, and I'm so glad I went back and listened to it to get prepared for this show, is John Clarence Stewart
mm,
from Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist and P Valley
yep.
and so many others. But this conversation was so fun, so deep, so genuine. Like, we went everywhere. We spanned across so many conversations with this one. And this was before we had Zoom Premium, so the conversation actually got cut off, but we were able to finish up the interview. It was just, all right, yep, goodbye. Yeah. So it was one of those things
I
where we're like,
do remember that.
no,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
after this conversation is when we signed up for the premium.
Yeah.
We were like, no, this can't happen again, because they restrict you at like a 45-minute mark. And
Right.
I'm sure not a lot of people know we have a pre-conversation and then we have a post-conversation after and before the interviews. So to get them more comfortable and get them to know who we are, so they don't go in thinking that they're just talking to random strangers.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was such an amazing conversation that I urge people to go back and listen to that one specifically. Because like I said, we talk about religion, death, finding yourself, losing yourself, and mental health, and all of these different things. It was a beautiful one, to be
And
honest.
it really was. And the way that he weaved everything, that whole emotional, we're going up, we're going down, we're going to get sad, we're going to get happy, we're going to laugh, we're going to cry. The way that he weaved all of it together and yet still somehow talked about, hey, this is how I approach my acting. Hey, let me tell you about my show that I put on, because I'm so passionate about music, and I had, Studio 54 below, and like, and the way he was able to weave it all together, and then still, it was an amazing, amazing conversation. And by the way, guys, I'm sure you've seen on our social media when we repost and stuff, this man, if you haven't seen him in his show, go see him when he performs, because this guy can kill it on stage, y'all. He is like a hardcore musician and singer. This guy's getting it done. I mean, he's got so much talent. They scratched the surface on Zoe's. This guy is for real. I'm just telling you, this guy is for real. Another fun one for us, and maybe a first if I'm not mistaken, because we've had so many, but Shanola Hampton. We've huge Shameless fans. We had the great opportunity to go out and to the America 2.0 event and stand on the red carpet with Shanola and pictures and just have this conversation with her and get to know her. And she is just like this amazingly awesome, kind, genuine person. And if I'm not mistaken, she was the first person to really break something really big on the show. She was about to make her directorial debut, and she held it and she gave it to us. She said, I'm going to announce this for the very first time ever on your show. I'm going to make my directorial debut by directing one of the final episodes of Shameless. And we were like, what? So, we were able to get that big. We had it first before in fact, if I'm not mistaken, we dropped the soundbite. We bleeped it, but we dropped the soundbite before any of the trades had it. We knew she was going to direct before the trades ran with it. And that was like an amazing little kind of a thing to say, oh my gosh, she's gonna do this for us. She's gonna be like that. That's amazing. So that's really kind of cool. And again, it goes back to like what you were saying earlier, Logan, about always be nice, be kind to people, be yourself, be a good person, because in return, they will do that for you. They will be a good person. They will show up when you need them to, and they will give you. It's just, Shanola has been just amazing. She's always spot on. She's been so good. And we're forever grateful for her and all of the people from America 2.0. Actually, let's just throw them all in there because they were all absolutely phenomenal and fantastic to invite us out there to that event and to give us that type of exposure, because they literally actually took the time during their event and turned it towards us and said, hey, by the way, here's the Crazy Ant guys. And they came out here. Guys, that's like a rare thing that doesn't happen very often, that to take the time out of where you're supposed to be getting all the press and all the glory, and turn it and say, by the way, check out these guys. Forever grateful for that. They were amazing, and that just, it was incredible. And Shanola's just still a gem, and we love her to death, and thrilled for her show, for Found, and all the success she's having after Shameless.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. And I mean, it's always like it's kind of like Candyland, one foot in front of the other, because like I mean, we really wouldn't have even known about America 2.0 and gone out to that event if Autumn Reeser didn't post on social media, vote for Seth. And you
Exactly.
being such a political junkie, you like research the hell out of like Congress, Senate, all of these different things in the political junket, to where you're like, who is Seth? I don't understand. Who is Seth?
Yeah,
And like it became a little obsession of yours before they even announced that they were doing the podcast.
it
And then
was.
yeah, we were able to talk to her about not only America 2.0, but everything else that she's been in as well. And that was an amazing experience.
Oh yeah, the very first time. Yeah, it was like I'm glad you brought it because I totally forgot about that. Yeah, but yeah, I was like obsessed with finding out who the fuck this Seth guy was and why didn't I know about him? You're so right. I finally just, yeah, we had to call her up and like, hey, should I be voting for this Seth guy? Who is he? And then she's like, he's a fake. He's like, this is a thing I'm doing. Oh, okay. But I remember the very first time we interviewed her, she called in. She was in the car. Remember? She was doing it from her car. And she called in, and that was interesting because it was like, okay, this is going to be rocking and rolling. But very generous and very nice, and it was awesome. And she's been a really good one too. Um one of my favorite moments on the big 100th episode, we had the incredible Jason Ritter on the 100th episode, our big milestone 100th episode, and he was the guest. But we also had Rebecca Kennedy and Autumn Reeser come and join us on the top five, and we did a book club top five. So we all sat and told our favorite top five books. We all learned like all these amazing books from each other and everything, and it went over really well. I mean, we still get messages like, "When are you guys going to do the next book club? When are you guys going to do the next book club?" So that was fun. Just little things that we were learning like that about, like, oh, what can we do? How can we change it up? What can that the fans would really like, kind of a thing.